Oh.
Alrighty, welcome to another halfway podcast episode. This
Ooh.
week is another Mark and Jay week. I did invite Cody last minute, and he could not make it, which in a
Yeah.
pandemic is like, what else are you doing? If he's on Discord right now playing games, so help me God.
Let me look. Let me look if he's on Steam. He is not on Steam. He's not even logged in.
Oh, he must be actually busy then.
Maybe. But he was last online 13 minutes ago.
Maybe he had something that started at 7. You never know. Maybe it's
Yeah,
church. Ooh, church
This
time.
podcast started at 7.
Yeah. So this week we're talking about another lady named Judy. She didn't do the same thing as the last Judy if you listen to that 2-part series. But on September 7th, 1997, hunters in Pegan National Forest in North Carolina found human bones, clothes, and other items scattered in the woods near a campground. The remains were mostly centered around a shallow grave and belonged to a woman between 40 and 55 years old with a seriously arthritic knee. Today, I'm going to tell you all, Jay and listeners, about the disappearance and death of Judy Smith. Raise my seat up a little bit, though. So, Judith Lois Bradford Smith was a 50-year-old nurse from Newton, Massachusetts. She had 2 brothers, one younger, and the other was her twin. I'm not a twin. I don't know any twins, but that's cool.
I know some twins, but I'm not one.
The Olsen twins?
I have some friends who are twins.
Oh.
And my buddy's sons are twins.
Gross.
And my roommate has a twin.
What? Genetic anomalies. Mutants.
Yeah, mutants.
This Judy twin didn't have a particularly easy life. Not all of us do. She was born in 1946 to a working class family in Massachusetts, and when she was just out of high school, she got married, as is the custom sometimes.
I guess so. I don't know who would want to do that. Whatever.
Yeah, I can't imagine
Live
it.
your life, little idiot.
Yeah.
Live your life.
Well, that marriage failed almost immediately. Her husband abandoned her when he fled to Sweden to avoid being drafted into Vietnam. So she headed to Europe to find him, but ended up eventually just coming home alone. She couldn't get him. And that marriage dissolved.
She went to Europe and she couldn't find anyone else. I mean, a lot of Europeans she could have found instead of their abandoned husband.
Yeah, there could be a reason for that. I'll tell you later on. Her second marriage to a thoroughbred racetrack worker named Charles Bradford gave her a son and a daughter born 2 years apart, but that marriage also soon ended before the kids were school age. Judy Bradford found herself divorced twice with no job and 2 small children to raise. She cared for her kids while putting herself through nursing school, though, so she pulled it together. She wasn't a slouch. She handled this all herself if she had to. She would drop the kids off at the movies so she could study in her car for her nursing school. Shit like that. She worked hard, eventually working 70-hour weeks as an RN, and she got herself off the social safety net system and advanced rapidly in her career. She brought up 2 fine kids and was the classic single mother success story.
Oh, yeah.
Hell yeah. Judy Bradford was described as smart, assertive, and a take-charge person who took pride in her street smarts and ability to look after herself. I don't know how close Newton is to Boston, but I think that they probably would say street smarts. So that's my take on that. Hot take.
I don't know either. That's a very hot take.
Judy was working as a home care nurse for a dying man in Boston in 1986 who recently had surgery to remove a throat tumor. She also became familiar with the patient's son, a successful lawyer named Jeffrey Smith. Jeff had gone to Harvard and had graduated law school in 1969, following in his father's footsteps, who was a successful New England criminal defense lawyer. He grew up wealthy, went to private schools on his trajectory to wealth and success, which was a different story from what Judy went through, but they found some stuff in common. Jeff was divorced and had a daughter he was raising on his own. Weirdly, her name was Judith as well. So,
that is weird.
Like stepmother, like daughter. A romance soon developed after Judy stopped caring for Jeff's father, and after a short 7 years, they moved in together. Jeffrey broached the subject of marriage, and after being together 3 more years, so 10 total. The couple married in November 1996 when Judy was 50.
You can't move too quickly.
Yeah.
You know?
Especially, I think that if I had 2 failed marriages, I probably would not be excited to start another one with that track history.
I think 1 failed marriage would be enough for me to be like,
we're going to maybe take it slow. 10 years, 20 years, what's the big deal?
Yeah.
The long wait for nuptials seemed to have been Judy's idea. After so many years being independent and 2 failed marriages, she seems a bit uneasy about a 3rd trip down to the altar. But when she did finally take the plunge again, she allegedly found domestic bliss by most accounts. Jeff's mother was in her early 80s when this marriage happened, and she was apparently super excited for this union and agreed to plan and pay for the wedding herself. Jeff asked Judy to sign a prenup, and Judy didn't like that very much, but eventually she did sign it and refused to read the paperwork.
Yeah, that can be I imagine that can be a rough conversation.
Yeah. Hey, if we ever get divorced, you're not going to take my stuff, okay? Sound good? You get nothing.
I mean, it makes sense to me. I think everyone should sign a prenup when they get married.
Yeah.
But I'm 30 and not married, so I don't know much.
Makes a divorce easier.
Yeah.
At this point, the pair had every reason to expect a long-ish and prosperous life ahead. They're 50 years old. There's not a whole lot ahead, but there's some. Could be a few decades.
Yeah.
On April 9th, 1997, Jeff and Judy went to Logan International Airport in Boston. Jeff represented an organization that was holding the Northeast Pharmaceutical Conference in Philly. Sounds super exciting. And he was an expert in healthcare law. He was set to moderate a panel at this pharmaceutical convention. Big Pharma. The convention ended on April 11th, so the 9th to the 11th, and after that, Jeff and Judy were going to go visit friends in Jersey. When they got to the airport, Judy said, "Oh crap, I forgot my driver's license." Jeff had a commitment later that afternoon, a panel of some sort or something, so they agreed Judy would just go home, get her license, and then catch a later flight by herself. And Jeff took the flight that they had planned to take on his own. Judy wasn't a stranger to traveling. She'd gone to Thailand on her own. She'd made a couple of trips, that one to find her husband and another trip to Europe by herself. She wasn't super shy with solo travel, so having to catch a flight later on by herself wasn't necessarily a huge burden.
Generally speaking, that's pretty well traveled. I mean,
yeah, I've not gone to Thailand.
Yeah.
I've been to places on this side of the world, but not anywhere else.
Yeah, same.
Judy, nope, I already said that. But she caught the 7:30 p.m. flight to Philly, landed about 9, and took a cab to the Doubletree Hotel, arriving around 10. As an apology, she offered flowers to Jeff in the lobby as he was coming out of the dining hall. Jeff and Judy went to their room and talked about their plans for the next day. Judy had never been to Philly, so she wanted to be a tourist, go sightseeing, while Jeff spent the day at his work conference. Judy planned specifically to visit the Liberty Bell and Independence Hall like a tourist would. I would if I went to Philly. I would also try to find the bar Patty's Pub from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
I think I would find Patty's Pub before I found the most underwhelming American historical item in the world.
Yeah.
Or in the world in the United States.
Yeah.
Cracked Bell is underwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe Independence Hall is cool, but it's like, what are you going to look at there? It's not going to be very long. I wouldn't spend a lot of time there.
Yeah.
After they had this convo about what are we doing tomorrow, the couple shared a room service pizza and went to bed. I just had pizza for dinner. It's my cheat meal for the week. In the morning, Jeff went down to have breakfast, and Judy slept in. And around 9 o'clock, he went back to the room to let Judy know he'd found a free continental breakfast. Hey! And Judy was in the shower at this point. So he went to go get breakfast. They said goodbye, and Jeff went off to the conference and breakfast and whatnot. That was the last time Jeff would ever see Judy alive. Throughout the day, Judy didn't show up back to the room, and Jeff assumed she's just having a great time sightseeing. It's 1997. There's not texting and cell phones. It's more like pagers and car phones and Seinfeld, so he couldn't check in if he wanted to unless Judy happened to call and he was in the hotel room at the time or left a message with the concierge. Jeff came back to the room expecting to find Judy at around 5 p.m. They'd agreed to meet there, get ready, and head to a cocktail party at 6. Except Judy wasn't there at 5 p.m., and she didn't show up by 5:30. Jeff thought maybe he misunderstood and Judy just went straight to the party. That's not so unusual. So he went to the room in the hotel where the party was being held and looked for Judy, but she wasn't there either. He looked around and waited for 45 minutes and asked the concierge to call local hospitals in case she'd gotten hurt during her day trip in the city. But the hospitals couldn't find anyone matching her name or description, so Jeff called a cab and searched around town on his own. He focused on the places Judy said she was going to go visit, the Liberty Bell, Independence Hall, but didn't find anything. No sign that she'd even been there. She wasn't there now. He called the cops a couple hours later, who said, "You have to wait 24 hours to report a missing person. Call back tomorrow and you can report her missing." Jeff and some friends, they didn't like that very much, so he's an attorney. He thinks he's better than everyone. So they contacted various media outlets and the city's mayor when the police didn't immediately open a missing persons case. But that barrage of publicity had its effect. Early the next morning, Jeff went to the police station and filed a missing persons report. And that Friday, 2 days after Judy was last seen, 6 detectives were instantly assigned to track down this missing person. Judy had been transformed into a high-profile case, and an intensive search was made throughout the city. Over the next week, they searched the homeless shelters, hospitals, trains and bus stations, psych wards, and checked the morgue. Detectives followed every lead they got, no matter how small. For example, the detectives found out Judy loved Asian food, so the detectives interviewed dozens of people in Philly's Chinatown, hoping somebody had seen her, but nobody had seen her, anyone matching her description. Both Jeff and the authorities asked people around the hotel and the conference and town where they had last seen Judy and when. A hotel employee remembered Judy asking where she could catch the Flash, a bus that travels throughout various historic locations. When the driver was questioned, they said Judy caught the bus that afternoon and exited near the Doubletree Hotel, where they were staying. The same afternoon, she was seen entering and exiting the Greyhound bus station 10 minutes from the hotel. It was assumed she just used the restroom or something. One witness said she saw Judy near the hotel acting, quote, disoriented around 3 p.m. She was chasing a piece of paper and laughing to herself, apparently. Which is a real weird thing to imagine.
Yeah.
Jeff and the couple's family members searched and distributed flyers all throughout Philly, and dozens of people reported having seen Judy, and they called tip lines to report the same things. But not one actual trace of Judy was found throughout the city. No physical evidence she'd ever even been there. Her plane ticket to Philadelphia had been used, but that was all the physical evidence they had. It was also unusual, a detective later would say, that there wasn't much female stuff in the room, makeup and deodorant and stuff like that. The day after she went missing, Judy was seen acting strangely in a Macy's at the Deptford Mall in New Jersey. It's not particularly close, kind of the suburbs. A salesperson and another customer were able to describe her, even mentioning the bright red backpack she always carried, which was a factor. They were telling everybody about this bright red backpack. And the woman never goes anywhere without it, apparently. The woman they saw was shopping for dresses for her daughter and seemed unstable. As she was leaving, this woman tried to get a younger woman to leave with her. She seemed to think the woman who happened to be standing next to her was her daughter. Judy's family and a private detective believed that this actually was Judy. Months later, in July of 1997, a woman reported seeing Judy at the Wild Wild West Casino in Atlantic City. Several other people reported seeing her at Penn's Landing in Philly. Cops concluded the woman wasn't actually Judy, but a homeless woman who sort of looked like her. Judy's son Craig even mistook this homeless woman for his mom, so she had a striking resemblance, I guess.
Yeah,
David,
kidding.
a homeless man who was shown a picture of Judy, insists he saw her twice and not the look-alike. He claimed Judy had slept on a bench next to the one he was sleeping on, and he tried to buy her a coffee in the morning. Another investigator noted she was supposedly here one night, then went off by herself the next morning, but she had friends at the convention and nobody saw her. Another said there were so many strange coincidences you don't know what to think. She didn't get on the plane with him. They meet in the lobby. They go to breakfast separately. A policewoman found no personal effects in the hotel room that you'd expect. Again, no makeup, no lotions, not even clothes Judy had been wearing the previous day after traveling, which was unusual. Would she wear the exact same clothing after all that travel 2 days in a row with additional clothes in the hotel? Unlikely. I wouldn't. That's gross.
Hell no. I'd be get out of those fucking flight clothes so fast.
Oh,
man.
yeah.
You just feel gummy from flying.
Yeah,
you
even
know?
before the pandemic, people coughing and taking their shoes off on a plane.
Yeah.
Disgusting. Skepticism was high for the investigators on this case. The tips started to dry up, and there was little to follow by way of leads after just a couple weeks. Detectives spoke to the crew members on Judy's flight to Philly, and none of them could remember seeing Judy, but they see a lot of passengers in a day, so it's not necessarily unusual. There was no one in the seat next to Judy on her flight, and the other passengers they contacted couldn't recall seeing her either. The crew's head count for the number of passengers checked in and on board were the same, and somebody had used, probably her, that ticket that had been used. Family and friends were outraged that police thought Jeff could have anything to do with Judy's disappearance. They described him as a gentle, honest, affectionate man who wouldn't hurt a fly. Judy's son Craig said, "They're wrong if they think Jeff did anything to my mother. They're wrong, not in a million years." And her daughter Amy told the Philly Inquirer, "If Jeff says she was in Philadelphia, she was there. It makes me mad that there's any doubt at all about that." There was a hotel worker named Stacy who did remember the flower incident from the night Jeff and Judy met at the hotel. Only she remembered it the other way around, that Jeff had given flowers to Judy. But she also remembered seeing Judy at the hotel the next morning. When she checked her calendar and schedule, she hadn't even worked that day. So memory's a funny thing.
Yeah.
Jeff was also adamant that his wife had not disappeared voluntarily. She was happy, and even if she did want to run away, why would she go to Philadelphia to do that, he said. His theory...
Plus, she's well-versed in divorce, so it's not like she's afraid just to tell a dude to go fuck himself.
I did not say, "Hey, Siri, don't respond." His theory was that while touring the city, Judy became disoriented and just wandered away somewhere outside of Philly. Maybe she was put in some sort of institution since neither she nor anybody else knew who she was. Maybe she was the victim of a street crime. Maybe she went off to start a new life and career. But Judy vanished in broad daylight in the middle of a busy city and sightseeing areas. Could she just have been whisked quietly away by some malevolent stranger? Seems unlikely. Judy was described as an outspoken person, hardly one to keep her feelings to herself, sometimes blunt to the point of being rude. Her friends, for instance, would cringe when they go out to dinner and the waiter would bring her meal because if something wasn't right, she would make a scene. Sounds like not my favorite kind of person.
Agreed.
Doesn't deserve to die, though. Those that knew her believed that if she wanted out of her marriage, she would have just said so. Her personality, they said, also ruled out suicide, which is not a strong argument. It's pretty regular that folks commit suicide and their loved ones didn't know or notice they were battling depression or suicidal ideation. So I don't like that argument.
Yeah, but it was the 90s, so.
Yeah, true. Maybe she had some medical problem that caused disorientation or amnesia or something. It could explain the bizarre sightings and behavior some people described. Nobody knew. 2 weeks before her disappearance, Judy had a physical at her doctor's office and was found to be completely healthy, but a mental break doesn't necessarily show up in blood work, so that's also not strong evidence one way or the other.
Right.
Jeff believes that maybe somebody tried to rob his wife. She fought back and sustained some kind of head injury in the process. And he asked neurologists and doctors about this, and they said it's possible, but highly unlikely. Despite the numerous theories, there was just no obvious reason for Judy's disappearance. August 31st, 1997, Philadelphia Inquirer quotes Detective Anthony Buccinico as saying, "I don't think she's in Philly any longer, if she ever even was. We had a lot of people searching. If she was here very long, we would have found her, or if something happened to her, we would have found her body." Early September 1997, Amy Bradford, Judy's daughter, said, "Rationally, I know something must have happened to her, but I try to think that she left on her own and she's okay, even though I know she wouldn't do that. But I try to think she did because that helps my peace of mind." 1 week after Amy said these words, and they were published in the Philadelphia Inquirer on September 7th, 1997, 5 months after the disappearance. A father and son went deer hunting at Pisgah National Forest near Asheville, North Carolina, 600 miles from Philly. About a quarter mile from a picnic area, they found a partially buried skeleton wrapped in a blue blanket. They looked closer and realized they were human. Police spent 4 days searching the crime scene. In total, the area was the size of 2 football fields. Some of the bones had been scattered around the area by animals, and the deceased person had been wearing insulated underwear, blue jeans, and hiking boots. In a small hole nearby, there was a blue vinyl backpack with winter clothing and $80 in it. In a different hole, a shirt was found with $87 in the pockets. There was also a pair of expensive sunglasses, which the family said didn't belong to Judy. Judy's engagement and wedding rings weren't initially found, but the next year detectives returned for another search and they did find them. The remains were very decomposed with no identification nearby. The coroner who examined the body found that the remains were of a white woman, late 40s to mid 50s, and it probably had been there since the spring when Judy disappeared.
Right.
There were puncture wounds and cuts on her bra, so the belief is that she was stabbed to death, and the red backpack that she apparently always carried was never recovered. Authorities worked to identify this.
Sounds like a trophy.
Yeah, authorities worked to identify this woman and came across a missing persons flyer about Judy Smith. Jeff had faxed thousands across the country, so they requested Judy's dental records and compared them to the unidentified remains. They were a match. Judy's case was now classified as a homicide. But that didn't give any answers to the disappearance. It just provided more questions. Why and how did Judy end up in Asheville? Judy and Jeff had been to North Carolina earlier that year visiting Durham, and they liked it so much Jeff applied for 2 jobs at North Carolina colleges when they got back home. Maybe he could be a teacher instead of a lawyer to spend more time at home. Amy Bradford said, "I was shocked. I guess you always anticipate that your parent will die, but not early. We always talked about when I would have kids and looking forward to that day, and I guess I just never thought that she wouldn't be here for that." Nearby, a clerk recalled having a very friendly conversation with Judy a few days after she was reported missing. Joanne Stucker, a retail clerk, had met Judy and said, "She seemed very alert to me. She was very pleasant. I didn't see anything about her that would indicate she wasn't right in any way. She told me her husband was an attorney and they were from Boston, and that they'd been in Pennsylvania and he was at a convention, and she decided to come down here." Several people in Asheville remembered speaking to a woman named Judy from Boston, including a hotel clerk who believes Judy stayed at the hotel from April 10th to 12th. Nobody knows why or how Judy ended up 600 miles from Philly in Asheville, North Carolina.
Serial killer.
Hell yeah. Judy's body, I already said that part, in the spring, but what's important to note is Judy was found wearing different clothes than the one she disappeared with. The day she disappeared, she was wearing white sneakers, a dark coat, blue jeans, and her red backpack. When she was found, she was wearing clothes made for hiking. She'd been seen at Macy's, though. Maybe she's buying different clothes for herself. Jeff was the only person of interest the cops even had, even though they couldn't provide any evidence. The lead detective believed Judy had run away from her marriage and was having a midlife crisis. There's lots of theories abound in this case.
Yeah.
When the body was found, authorities determined Jeff was incapable of reaching the mountainside because he's morbidly obese. There's just no way a guy his size could have climbed the mountain, and police believe Judy was killed on the mountain rather than being dragged there after she was already dead. Judy's family insists the couple had a healthy relationship, but one of Judy's friends disagrees. Carolyn Dickey claimed the couple had a tumultuous relationship and that Judy had wanted a break. So the leading theory is what happened to Judy, who the fuck knows, but the leading theory is Judy left voluntarily and ran into foul play at some point on her trip. If she left on her own accord, she left behind $500 in the hotel room at Doubletree, and her Amex was never used again. Authorities briefly looked at the possibility that Judy was one of Gary Michael Hilton's victims, but couldn't find a link. That serial killer had been active in Asheville at the time, and one of his victims had been found tied to a tree near Judy's remains. Not near her remains, but where her remains were found. Judy's family...
serial killer.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
It's likely. Judy's family still believes she was suffering from dissociative order like amnesia, and that's why she was disoriented. Judy's remains were cremated, and her bizarre vanishing and murder remains unsolved to this day. Jeff tried for years in vain to figure out what happened to Judy. He spoke to the media repeatedly, spent thousands on private investigators, all to no avail. He scaled back his law practice. He couldn't focus on his work representing criminal defendants, knowing his wife was a murder victim. And Jeff never married again and died in 2005 at the age of 59. 23 years later, there's still no lead on what happened to Judy Smith, how she got to Asheville, or why, and who killed her. And it seems like we're probably never going to know for sure how this mother of two and wife ended up on a remote, isolated mountain dead. I do think it was probably a serial killer. She got
Yeah.
to Asheville, North Carolina, somehow for whatever reason, and got killed.
Yep. That'd be my guess. And then probably just different clothes. I don't know. Maybe the serial killer was into dressing women up or something. I don't know.
Yeah, she could have even gotten, if she had planned on, if she went up that mountain herself. It was a mountain that's described as like, if you're going to Asheville, because people would go there, tourists would go because it's good hiking apparently around the area. But it's where she was found is not a place that anyone would say, oh, you're looking to hike, go to this remote, isolated place. So she went there somehow and got killed there. But if she was planning to just hike around, then she might have changed her own clothes.
Yeah, it's very
Who could
possible.
say?
I don't know. Obviously, no one really knows.
Yeah, the moral of the story is don't name your child Judy because she might call a hit on her ex-husband or she might get killed by an unknown
Telling
person.
you, every Judy I've met, there's been issues with.
It's like
This is
Judy's
just-
and crystals. Jeez.
I know. Holy shit.
Not good. So there's Judy Smith. The next one I do is not going to be about a murder victim. So that's something to look forward to. We don't have anything on we don't have a store for a Halfway Podcast, but you can get other Halfway Network and stuff swag. Do that. I got, my water bottle hasn't arrived. I've got a bunch of IDK, D&D stuff. I've got my
The
little
Halfway Network one.
Drunken Arcanauts notebook. Yeah, hell yeah. Get you some swag if you want. When the pandemic's
it's
over. Since
pretty
people are going back to
reasonably
work.
priced. Yeah, once everyone has money again, that'll be, you know.
Hell yeah. Dun, 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 dun.